Dear students and audience, I welcome you all to this session on environmental degradation and tourism, Unit 20 under TS5 Ecology, Environment and Tourism. Topic of tourism development usually has a close connection with environmental negligence, but unfortunately, we seldom discuss it in its entirety. Since the topic needs attention, we would be dividing into two sessions. After this session, you would be able to understand how tourism sometimes becomes partner to skewed development process resulting in land use pattern and becomes responsible for displacement of people as well. What is ecotourism? How carrying capacity of a destination is neglected sometimes, thereby bringing bad name to the ecosystem itself. The ecotourism dilemma, which contributes to environmental degradation, and finally, some of the ways how these problems can be overcome. Tourism has been recognized as a beneficial activity. For most of the people, it's an idle land use activity, a non-polluting job creating and foreign exchange earning portfolio. However, years of so being, experience and results of research have shown that if uncontrolled, this activity can also be dangerous to our ecosystem. Just to give you a perspective, pollution caused by tourists in itself is becoming a big thing to control. Leaving behind leftover bottles, cans, polythene packs, dumping of human waste is a problem faced at almost all the places. The nature of leftover varies from place to place as we incorporate infrastructure activities which in some or the other way are related to the promotion of tourism. Example, building resorts, hotels, laying down transportation, communication lines, developing golf courses, setting up small handicrafts, consumer industries, eating points near the coast. They destroy not only the physical landscape but also seriously affect the regions if not done properly. Another factor which affects the concerned ecosystem is deforestation, which is closely related to tourism. Currently, the development model is the free market model, where consumption drives the production system. The only limit to this free market are issues of environment, human rights, child labor, and other such unfair trade practices. In a country like India, a number of million Indians determine the priorities for development. Their needs determine what to produce and what to consume. Resistance. Although tourism has become great economic important activity to many third world countries, its potential to contribute significantly to better socio-cultural understanding among people and at the same time bring awareness to essential common denominators of humanity unfortunately have been majorly ignored. From the outset, total concentration has been on financial benefits. Recently, a number of broad-based studies have come to some disturbing conclusions about the mixed contribution of tourism to developing countries and its impact on host communities. Most of the tourists were attracted to India by its centuries-old culture. Tourism in India has profound influence on Indian culture. Tourism contributes to maximum extent as far as economic and socio-cultural well-being of the country is concerned. A few tourist circles benefited from these tourist operations. Unfortunately, vast majority remained outside of this magic circle. Basic issues that got highlighted as far as this socio-cultural disorientation was weakness of the conventional rigid model of development, efficiency of mega projects, and intensive development in solving the economic and social problems. New development literature and research is therefore concerned with study of people in protest. Such studies suggest that there is no one alternate model to replace the existing approach to development. Pluralistic model of development would, however, have one thematic principle which would be committed to allowing people to determine their relationship to their resources, respecting local wisdom and tradition, adapting scientific and technical skills to a specific location and problem rather than universalize the formula. We ought to understand the local community's benefit, the industrial and commercial usage of the nearby location, nature and wildlife, how they are getting affected. Aquaculture, beach resorts and golf courses have now become the key new resources for eco-friendly or green tourism, the new product that most third world countries are now developing, unfortunately in a not very systematic manner. Analysis of tourism impacts. Briefly stated, following are some of the problems which can arise out of unplanned or badly planned tourism. Obviously, deforestation is the highest among it. Privilege to one species and loss of species of diversity, loss of natural resources, impact of construction of roads and settlements to the nearby communities, soil erosion, coastal erosion, land degradation, water pollution, migration of poor and marginalized peoples, urbanization, so to speak, development of shanties, slums, and absence of social coherence in the poorest or remotest regions of the country with the so-called development of tourism. But then why tourism is needed for that matter? Tourism is a huge industry. It has been integral contributor to the growth of many countries. This booming sector is something that the whole world celebrates. It doesn't matter which country you live in. There is always a group of people who are interested in visiting your homeland. It's because of this development that tourism becomes an integral part of economy and aspiring global standards. A country can gain so much from its tourism sector, making it viable to the well-being of nation's foundation. This sector, when thriving, brings in abundance of wealth, growth, exposure, and employment opportunities. Tourism has become the legs which many countries use to walk forward and is something that brings joy to many people across the globe. Simple fact that people of all nationalities can get together, appreciate each other's culture is something, a true blessing we can look forward to. Along with the pride and enjoyment that tourism evokes, it is also a huge industry that supports the lives of millions of people. Countries that would otherwise be devastated find their means to grow from tourism. It is because of these various points that tourism will remain a very important part of the world, and the tag of smokeless industry is much true. Already accounting for 9% of the global gross domestic product, GDP so to say, the sector's relevance is bound to increase even more. The United Nations World Tourism Organization projects international tourist arrivals would increase 1.1 billion in 2014 to something like 2 billion in 2030. For many developing countries, it's a key pillar of national development, contributing to growth, employment, investment, as well as technological dissemination, particularly in many small island developing states, so to say. Tourism accounts for something like 25 to 60% of their national GDP. This scale of economic activity has major impacts on the global and local environment, unfortunately, such as pollution, waste, depletion of natural resources like water, energy, land, as well as enhanced greenhouse gas emissions. In many cases, unsustainable tourism can endanger the very base of its own success. Healthy ecosystem and habitats of flora and fauna are getting affected. So, what is ecotourism? The definition of ecotourism was introduced by the International Ecotourism Society in 1990. It states that the ecotourism is a form of travel into the natural areas aimed in conserving the environmental resources and preserve biodiversity. At the same time, improve local communities' livelihood as well. Ecotourism is a form of tourism that is responsible in preserving the natural areas to create economic benefits and maintain the cultural integrity of local communities, which is also a form of spatial tourism interest. A tourist activity can be regarded as ecotourism if it meets three of its dimensions. Conservation dimension, namely tourism activities are helping local conservation efforts with minimum negative impacts. Educational dimension, namely the tourists who follow the activities of these tours will get knowledge about ecotourism, unique local biological and socio-cultural lives, and social dimensions, namely the local people who have been key actors in implementing any tourist activity. Ecotourism is about uniting conservation, communities, and sustainable travel. This means that those who implement, participate in the market ecotourism activities should adopt the following ecotourism principles: minimize physical, social, behavioral, and physiological impacts, build environmental and cultural awareness and respect at the same time, provide positive experiences for both visitors and hosts, provide direct financial benefit for conservation, generate financial benefits for both local people and private industry, deliver memorable interpretive experiences to visitors that help raise sensitivity to host communities, political, environmental, and social climates, design, construct, and operate low impact facilities, recognize the right and spiritual benefits of indigenous people in that community, and work in partnership with them to create empowerment with minimum of disturbance to their beliefs and cultures. Next, what is the impact of ecotourism development? Whether ecotourism actually aids in the conservation of endemic and threatened species has been highly debated. Many argue that the impacts of tourism are too detrimental and intrusive to allow for populations to proliferate, particularly in regards to sensitive and rare species. Case studies of ecotourism have revealed that both positive and negative impacts have been observed. Common negative impacts of ecotourism were frequently related to stress, increased susceptibility to disease, and decreased biological functioning. When natural areas become popular in the travel industry, they usually become the site for hotel, excavation, and other tourist industry activities. These activities sometimes displace indigenous groups and local people from their homeland, which not only damages the integrity of those communities but prevents its members from benefiting from the economic benefits of the growth of local tourism industry, which in itself is a big dilemma. On top of ecotourism's potential impact on locals, the industry can also take a toll on surrounding wildlife. It's ironic given that ecotourism aims to educate ecotourists and promote the conservation of natural habitats. But for some species, the increased presence of humans may be default negativity impact on their natural behaviors. Increased foot traffic can also affect soil quality and plant life in general, damaging the area's overall ecosystem. Finally, not all tourist organizations that market themselves as ecotourist programs are actually environmentally friendly. These organizations know ecotourism is growing in popularity and may take advantage of that fact by parading as ecotourists when in reality they ignore eco-friendly practices. For that reason, it's important that would-be ecotourists do their homework before giving an organization their business. Learn how they are doing it. Learn. Ask questions. The pressure of infrastructure encourages the violation of amendment to existing laws. For example, the coastal zone regulation that prohibits construction and infrastructure within 500 meters from the high tide line has been infringed by the hotel lobby, which has been able to violate this regulation many a times. Mountain communities are becoming increasingly concerned about waste disposal and growing need for their own firewood and fuel. Trekkers and mountaineers carry a lot of supplies but do not carry away the empty packaging. Litter has become one of the major conservation issues. We end this session and would continue in the part 2 of the session. Thank you for being with us.